salutations, my dearest friends. My name is Samantha, and today I'm going to be talking about some queer romances that have witches and magic in them. Hello, how are you? Welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to Trope Week. If you don't know what Trope Week is, it is a series I do occasionally here on my channel where for an entire week I pick a bunch of specific book tropes and give you a ton of recommendations. At the time of me filming this, it is June, which means it's Pride Month. All week long I am doing a bunch of recommendation videos of books that have amazing LGBTQ representation. I will have the playlist linked down below if you want to check it out. A ton of videos, but so far I've already done Sapphic historical romances, and then yesterday I filmed a video where I talked about some queer fantasy books. I did mention in that video that I have so many fantasy and paranormal romances that have great LGBTQ representation. I was kind of debating if I wanted to do a part 2, and that is how this video kind of came to mind. I was thinking of a bunch of Sapphic romances that I have that have witches and magic in them. That is what this whole video is going to be about. It's going to be about queer romances that have the same vibe of witches, magic, warlocks, etc, etc. Wow, that was a really long intro. I'm so sorry. Again, I will leave the playlist of Trope Week down below, but let's go ahead and hop into those recommendations. First two recommendations that I have are actually some graphic novels. I believe these are also YA. To be completely honest with you, I've been reaching more for graphic novels recently. I just love the artwork and the graphics, and they're just so pretty. The first one I have talked about before, and I have a whole reading vlog on, and that is Love Potion by Cindy Paul. This is what the art looks like. It is just so stunning. It's a pretty short graphic novel, a really quick read, and essentially it follows a story where a witch in a town falls in love with the princess. Heroine Blair is a witch, and she has been secretly pining for the princess of the kingdom for as long as she could remember. She never thinks anything is going to come from it until one day the princess shows up in her shop asking for a love potion. This one is really sweet and humorous and cute, and I highly recommend. This graphic novel is called Coven. This is by Jennifer Dugan and Kit Seaton. I pronounced their names correctly. This one is a little bit longer. The art style is almost like a classic comic. It starts off by following our heroine MZ. She lives in California. She's kind of just living her best life with her girlfriend until very suddenly people in her old coven start to get murdered, and her family has to head back to New York to kind of figure out what's happening. In this book, she is really learning to become more in control with her magic as she's reconnecting with her old coven, and I really enjoyed this one. I read this one recently. It was on my TBR for a really long time, and I can't believe I was putting it off because it's a really good one. The next recommendation is another YA book, but I promise I do have some adult romances in here as well. Just have, a little something for everyone. This next one is one that I've recommended a lot on my channel, and that is These Witches Don't Burn by Isabel Sterling. Magic in the system is essentially elemental magic, so fire, wind, water, etc, etc. Our heroine lives in Salem, Massachusetts, and her coven start to realize that someone is performing a forbidden magic, which is blood magic. Blood magic is kind of known as this evil, dark magic, so the witch council had banned it. There's someone in their town who is practicing blood magic, so she ends up working with her ex-girlfriend to kind of figure out what's going on. There's also a new girl that just recently moved in town that she has a little bit of a crush on, and it follows their romance. I really liked all of the side characters. I liked the way that the magic was explained. This does end on quite an emotional cliffhanger, so just know that this is a first in the series. You'll probably want to pick up the next book after reading the ending, but I did really like this one. Next one I ended up picking up because it was continuously recommended to me on Kindle Unlimited. You guys know that's how I find a bunch of my recommendations, and it's called Tell Me How It Is by Quentin Lee. This is described as a cozy Sapphic fantasy book with lots of witches and magic. You can see why it was recommended to me. That is so my vibe. Not only does this book have amazing LGBTQ representation, but it also has great mental health representation. One of our heroines is also neurodivergent. Also has a lot of tense family dynamics. It follows our heroine Iris, who is a tarot card reader, and it's essentially the family business, and she has a lot of pressure on her mom to do well and to make a lot of money. As she's really trying to prove herself to her family, someone ends up coming into the shop desperately asking for her help to save a witch that was falsely imprisoned. It has a little bit of a quest to it, and I did enjoy this one as well. This next one is actually a novella, so a little bit of a shorter book that I found on Kindle Unlimited, and that is Witching Moon by Poppy Woods. The book follows our heroine Alondra, who also comes from a tense family dynamic, and she is desperate to prove herself to her family. However, she is a witch without any magic. She does not have any magic that she knows of and that she's been able to hone into. So she ends up trying to perform a spell, and she does it incorrectly and summons the moon. The actual moon goddess, Luna. just summons her right to Earth. Andra and Luna have to work together to figure out how to send her literally back to the moon. A little bit of the insta-love trope to it, which typically I don't like, but with a novella, it does make sense. I'm talking a little fast, need a little drink break. Need a new drink, actually. Next one I want to recommend is The Improbable Magic for Cynical Witches by Kate Skelsa. Again with these names, I'm so sorry for mispronouncing any of these names. I think this one is technically YA as well because it does follow a coven of teenage witches. It mainly follows our heroine Eleanor, who is really in a difficult place in her life. She just recently moved to Salem, Massachusetts, the home of the witches. She just recently lost her best friend and the love of her life, so she's really grieving that and has kind of like sworn off romance and anything related to magic until one day she is hand delivered a tarot card that is introducing her to this new coven. She ends up meeting a coven of witches. This has a huge found family trope and really follows her through different friendships and relationships, and it's a really fun one to read. This next one I'm actually currently reading right now, and that is Between Mischief and Magic by Marissa Serraro. This is a Sapphic fantasy book. It starts off by following our heroine, who is a princess who most recently lost her magic, so she ends up fleeing from her kingdom and it's kind of like this runaway princess vibe. She meets our other heroine, who is a succubus demon, in a bar, and they end up kind of like striking a deal to help the princess get her magic back. I love it, I love it, I love the vibes, I love the cover. I think she is going to be writing a second book in this series and has to do with like mermaids. So much fun. All right, so those are some Sapphic witchy books that I really love and I'm currently reading, and now we're gonna move on to some male romances. These books have like warlock and magic and all that jazz. The first book I want to talk about is Accidental Bonds by Marie Renard. This is a male paranormal romance with a lot of magic. This is a romance between a warlock and a werewolf shifter. Our hero, who is a werewolf, is the alpha of his pack. He recently became the alpha of his pack. His entire life he had been surrounded by magic. His pack was actually betrayed by a warlock, so he has completely sworn off magic until one day he's patrolling his territory and he senses some really dark magic that could hurt his family. He very reluctantly goes to the new warlock in town to see if they could like strengthen their wards. Other hero is a warlock who has also kind of sworn off werewolf shifter packs, does not want to mate with a werewolf or have anything to do with them, but our two characters do end up working together and immediately they have such an instant connection. This obviously has like a fated mates vibe to it. I really liked this one. I felt like the magic system was really unique. It was very spicy indeed, and I loved it a lot. I have read other books by this author and I just think they're so fantastic. The books are also very like humorous. I love all of the side characters. I'll say this book does end in a little bit of a cliffhanger, but I was not upset by that because the second book is about one of the side characters in this one that I really loved, so I cannot wait for it to come out. I can't do a video like this without talking about one of my favorite authors ever, okay? And that is Marina Vivancos. I talk about Miss Marina Vivancos all the time. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I will find a way to recommend her books in every situation because she is hands down my favorite author of all time. If you go on her website, I love her tagline, and I always use this to describe her books because it's so perfect. She describes herself as a queer author who writes queer romances. Love that. Love. She predominantly writes on Kindle Unlimited. Her books are so romantic, but they're also very emotional because a lot of them have amazing mental health representation in them. So if you're looking for a very unique, queer, magical book, I would recommend her Coven Ties series. This is a series of male romances. The first book is called Oh Sacred Dark. This takes place in a dom sub universe, which is a very like niche subgenre, but it's very similar to Omegaverse, where people are born with a designation. They are either dominant or submissive, and they require like different biological needs depending on what your designation is. It also has a ton of magic. First book follows our hero Roman, who was born into a coven that participated in chaos magic, which is this very dark and violent and bloody magic that was actually banned by the Witches' Council. He endured both physical and mental abuse by the hands of his coven, but there is one situation where he ends up working with another witch in the coven to expose them to the magical council so that they can be disbanded. For safety, he ends up getting placed into another coven. This coven is wonderful and it's safe, but it takes Roman's body and mind a really long time to recognize that. So he ends up getting paired with Tyler, who is a dominant. He's very highly ranked in the coven, and his job is to help Roman acclimate to this new society. So beautiful. I feel like I'm not even describing it correctly because the plot is just intensely unique and emotional. The magic system is really cool. Every witch is born with a different type of magic. You have animal magic, water magic, transformation magic. It just like depends on the character. Other two books are called Out of the Wild Night and In the Shadow Longing, and I recommend all of them. Read all of them because they're just so freaking good. Another one of her books that has a lot of magic in it is All That Has Flown Beyond. This is technically the second book in a duology, but you can read it as a standalone. It follows a romance between a werewolf shifter and I think they call him a shaman in this book. I think that's what he's called. Very similar to like a warlock. Two heroes are fated mates. They have known each other since they were children. They grew up in the same werewolf pack. One of our heroes is destined to be the pack alpha, and then our other hero is, like I said, a shaman, which every pack needs to like strengthen their wards. This is a very angsty second chance romance though. When our characters are very young, their entire pack is killed, and only them and a couple of their friends end up surviving it. Really struggle to create these new bonds for their pack. And our hero, who has magic, feels a lot of responsibility to protect the pack and ends up putting himself into positions that are very dangerous and that are draining him. So for his safety, his pack makes his decision to kick him out, which is a very traumatic experience because these people are the only family that he ever knew. He had a mating bond with one of them, and he really spirals into a deep depression when he's kicked out of the pack. The story spans many years, and it follows our hero as he is recovering from that depression, as he is making a name for himself, and then many years later his old pack ends up calling him. He is reunited with his old pack because they are experiencing a danger and a threat to their lands. Again, that was a really long explanation, but when it comes to Myrna Vivanco's books, they're just so incredibly unique and dynamic, and I've just never read anything like them, so it's kind of like hard to get across how special they are and how much nuance they have, because this book is so much more than a romance. It follows our character's mental health journey, his journey of discovering his sexuality and also discovering who he is as a person, and I love the representation that she has in her books. It's so flawlessly done every fucking time. Yeah, highly recommend this one. Another one that is so incredibly unique is Perfectly Charmed Pixie by MJ May. This is the third book in the Perfect Pixie series. I would say maybe you could read this one out of order, but I don't want you to, because I want you to read all of the books because they're all so fantastic. But this is the one that has the most magic in it. It's a romance between a warlock and a pixie. Our hero Parsnip is a social pixie, which means he really thrives almost like as a social media presence and being like in the public. His entire job really depends on his appearance, and when he was younger he was kidnapped by an ogre for his pixie dust, which caused a lot of his magic and his color in like his hair to fade. So he's been contacting different warlocks to create this device that allows him to change his physical appearance. However, it is at great cost to his life because he's literally like feeding his soul to allow this magic device to continue to work. That is when he meets our hero Vander, who is this grumpy warlock, and he originally contacts him to see if he could make a device that would allow him to change his appearance, but it starts to follow their romance. This one has a slight mystery plot to it because there's kind of like this kidnapping trafficking ring that's happening where other supernatural creatures are kidnapping pixies for their pixie dust. So with that mystery element, they have to figure out who is committing these crimes. In a very unique book, MJ May writes paranormal romances like nobody else, if I'm being completely honest with you. They're an author on Kindle Unlimited that my best friend Desiree actually introduced me to, so I highly recommend them. The next two books are really popular, so I'll kind of breeze through them super quick. First one is Raven Song by TJ Klune. The reason I'm just gonna like breeze past this one is because it is a second book in a series and you have to read the whole series in order. It's a part of the Green Creek series, and all of it is a bunch of male shifter romances. The second book is an angsty second chance romance between a pack witch and a werewolf. Gordo and Mark are fated mates, and they immediately knew that they had a special bond since they were like teenagers. However, Mark's loyalty was always to his pack and his family. His family suffered a really great loss when someone from their pack was kidnapped. They end up leaving their hometown as they are kind of healing from that, and in doing so, Mark leaves Gordo behind. Years later, they end up reconnecting when this werewolf shifter pack returns back home. So it is a very angsty second chance romance. I really love Gordo. He is such he's like this grumpy character that you can't help but love. Yeah, I love this book so much. I love the series so much. Next one is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. This is a YA book. It follows our main character, Yadriel. He is a trans male teenager, and his family is not entirely accepting of that. A lot of their magic and their roles in the family is really determined by gender roles. So he is really struggling for people to understand who he is, and he really wants to prove himself as a brujo. So he ends up going to perform like this ritual and this spell to prove that he is a brujo, and he actually ends up summoning a ghost. When he sees this ghost, he immediately recognizes him because it is a boy from his school that he's always had a crush on, and they realize that he was murdered. So they kind of have to work together to see who murdered him, and it follows the romance. It's so beautifully written, and I think about it often. I love the culture representation in here, and it's such a good book. Hopefully I got through everything. As always, after I do my recommendations, I like to talk about some books that I have on my personal TBR in case you want to add it to your own TBR. So as I was really thinking about what books I wanted to add to this video when pulling some books from my shelves, I found this one that I don't think I've ever read, and that is This Spells Disaster by Tori Ann Martin. This is a Sapphic witchy romance. Synopsis says, fake dating gets a magical twist in this enchanting queer romantic comedy. I love that. Definitely want to pick this up. If there are any queer witchy romance books that you think I need to check out and I didn't mention in this video, please leave your recommendations down below. I would love to read them. If you have stayed this long and you enjoyed the video, what emoji should we use? I think we already used the crystal ball in our last video, so I think there's a magic wand. I'm pretty sure there's a magic wand emoji. If you stayed this long and you enjoyed the video, leave a magic wand in the comments. That does not sound right. Wait, stop. I'm gonna fucking cry. Sam. Well, we can't take it back now. Okay, magic wand in the comments down below if you stayed this long, and I'll know, we're bookish besties. Wow. Anyways, I hope you guys are enjoying Trope Week. Stay with me for the rest of the week for even more recommendations. Thank you for taking time out of your day to spend time with me. It means the world to me. As always, I hope you guys are staying happy and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Bye. I can't take myself seriously today.